Okay, Thursday, 22nd of May, 2025. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Thoughtful Thursday, philosophy and musings from life. The ends justify the means. The means justify the ends. This is an interesting little dichotomy in life worth understanding, and something that I came across a good 20 or so years ago, I remember. And the ends justify the means, meaning the result itself justifies how it was done. The ends justify the means, or the means justify the ends. The methods and techniques used justifies the end itself. Really, it's a question of what's more important, you could say, to you. Comfort or justice? Results or feelings? Facts or emotions and sensations? Because if the end is what's important for you, then the method, the route, doesn't matter. It's immaterial because you're focused on that. It is object orientated, objective orientated thinking. I want that. That's my bearings. I don't care if we go this way or that way. I want that. And the means justifying the ends, as in I'm focused on what we do, and that culminates in the specific ending we want. I'm going to take this road only, not that one, to get to destination. And this is interesting to understand in life. Some people would often say that those that put the ends above the means, you could say that they're heartless. Or you could say the opposite, that they're being pragmatic, they're being utilitarian. I did a video akin to this a few months ago, back in December or January, talking about El Salvador as a use case in pragmatism versus principles. And that's a whole nuanced conversation there. But it's an interesting, we can extrapolate from that the idea of the ends, the results, is the ends is more important, therefore it justifies the extreme methods and techniques, the means. All sorts of ideas and extreme techniques are used, but if the end result, as in that comfort, is achieved, that goal is achieved, perfect, what's the problem? By some people's measurements and metrics. By others, it could be a complete disaster. Again, justice, they might say, right, well, we only want to achieve a just end by using just methods. And that's a very noble way of looking at it. Very nice, noble way, an ideal way of looking at it. Some would even go as far as to say naive. Simply because not everyone in the world thinks in the same way as you. Some people are more Machiavellian, more narcissistic, more psychopathic, more underhanded, less agreeable or more disagreeable. So they'd be more willing and inclined to use underhanded, dangerous, illegal things just to live, just to survive, i.e. criminals, gangs, thieves. Not everyone will share the idealistic methods or idealistic noble intentions as those that have just ends and just means. Because understand also in life, fundamentally, might makes right. He who has the gold makes the rules. He who has the guns make the rules as well in this contemporary, well, most societies really. But I think to expand on that logic, he who has the Bitcoin makes the rules. But that's a whole other conversation way in the future. But he who has the guns makes the rules. And he with the guns, those who have a monopoly on power, they determine what is legal and illegal. And in some interesting way, that affects morality. Because if people can't do this thing, they are, over generations, they become more accustomed to doing it this way. And through social learning theory, that becomes the new moral, standard, normal, culturally accepted, socially calibrated method of doing things. So then in the future, the means can change. And you change how people perceive it. But the ends, eat bread, food, for example. Some societies might say that stealing is okay. Others would say it's not okay. Dichotomies and situations like that, nuances like that, are very possible. Depends on the subjective morality of the place. Again, what is legal and moral here, in this particular location of the world, might not be 100 years from now, nor was it 100 years ago. Likewise, 1,000 kilometres that way versus 1,000 kilometres that way The rules and regulations in the society is different, and the culture is different. Interesting. But we can go one step further and say, how apathetic or nihilistic do you want or are willing to be? How apathetic or nihilistic, indifferent we could say, do you want or are willing to be? In a sense of these methods, different harsh, cruel methods, means that some parts of society, the fringes or the minority of people here and there, or a friend of a friend of a friend, suffered. But if the majority of people get what they want, again, it's the objective orientated thinking as opposed to task orientated thinking. If the society as a whole is better, then what difference does it mean if a few people here and there and here in the fringes, the absolute minority of people suffer? How pathetic, how indifferent and nihilistic do you want to be towards their suffering, other innocent people? Very interesting way of looking at it. Certain numbers of people were lulled into apathy and comfort, material and financial comfort, while their freedoms were stripped away bit by bit. And I'm being broad on purpose with that, but that's happening. Certain societies of people were lulled into apathy and comfort, while their freedoms were stripped away bit by bit. Now, I heard an interesting argument for this, actually, very recently in a philosophical video, let's say. And it talked about if this society was solving the problems of the majority, societal problems, wealth problems, you name it, problems, infrastructure problems, big, overarching, common good problems, then what does it matter if the freedoms and liberties are minimized or affected? The video even talks about how that could be seen as hollow, because if this society is solving the problems, that the critical mass of people say, great, again, the ends, but the means are not very palatable, let's say, but the critical mass of people agree and happy, and what does that tell you? It kind of shows that then that democracy and freedoms are a little hollow. But that's a very nuanced way of looking at it. But it's still logically sound. If these problems are being solved, the ends, but the means are not very palatable, a bit sickening, a bit scary, but not very pleasant, but the problems are solved, so on balance and average, things are improving, the critical mass of people think things are improving, on the right course, on the right track. Wow, you got an interesting recipe for success almost. And I did a video about this as well, actually, that in life there is suffering by default. I used the example of, say, food, meat. Someone has to work 12 hours in a slaughterhouse preparing the meat that would ultimately be available for you to buy on the shelf of the supermarket and to eat or cook and eat and consume at the drop of a hat. Wow. Someone had to work intense for that. Interesting. Logically sound. But that's an interesting dichotomy in life to understand and be aware of. The ends justify the means justify the ends. It's an approach, it's a methodology. And understand fundamentally, not everyone, the critical mass or not of people, not everyone will be as noble or as just or as kind or as agreeable or open to experiences as the culture or society. This is that underbelly, that criminal class of people, that aggressive, disagreeable, impulsive, not long-term thinking kind of people. That's an element of mankind and civilization that has always been there and will always be there. It's just human nature, aggression, violence, using a gun, things like that, weapons to get what they want, or underhandedness, manipulation, lies, deception. And in that case, then you could say the means. The critical mass of people will say the means, the methods, techniques are bad, immoral, destructive, worthy of being ostracized. I wonder if there's a word for that, actually. Yeah, worthy of being isolated or worthy of being denied. Interesting. Yeah. But understand that dichotomy in life, that dilemma, the question of two things. The ends justify the means, and the means justify the ends. Very interesting concept, interesting way of looking at the world and society and philosophy and morality. An end result. Objective, orientated thinking, I want that, the route doesn't matter, versus task, doing this and this and that and that and this, and that leads to the end result. Really, it's big picture versus zoom macro view. Micro, micro, macro. Yeah. Micro, opposite. Micro, microscope, micro, and macro view of strategizing and looking at the world. Yeah, interesting stuff. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smarter stuff mentioned now. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.